The world was quiet, too quiet. The once bustling streets of Chicago were now empty, littered with debris and the remnants of a civilization that had been crushed under the weight of an alien occupation. The air smelled faintly of rust and decay, a constant reminder of what humanity had lost. For centuries, Earth had been nothing more than a factory planet for the Galactic Concord, a coalition of alien species who had come not as conquerors but as opportunists. They hadn't destroyed humanity outright. Instead, they had enslaved it, stripping away its freedom while forcing humans to work in mines, factories, and fields to fuel their endless wars across the galaxy. Daniel Carter walked through the ruins of what used to be downtown Chicago, his boots crunching against broken glass and concrete. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, his face weathered by years of hard labor and even harder choices. His hands were calloused from years spent repairing machinery for the Concord's factories, but there was still a spark in his dark eyes, a stubborn refusal to give up entirely. Daniel wasn't a hero or a leader. He was just another cog in the machine, someone trying to survive one day at a time. But today felt different. Today, something inside him stirred, though he couldn't explain why. He had taken this route home, dozens of times before, skirting the edges of the city where the Concord patrols rarely ventured. It wasn't safe here. Collapsed buildings loomed like skeletons, and the ground was uneven, riddled with cracks and holes. Yet, Daniel preferred it to the crowded dormitories where workers were crammed together like animals. Out here, he could breathe. Out here, he could pretend, for a little while, that things weren't as bad as they seemed. As he passed by a pile of rubble near the old library, something caught his eye. A glimmer, faint but unmistakable, peeked out from beneath a slab of shattered concrete. Curious, Daniel knelt down and brushed away the dirt and dust. What he uncovered sent a shiver down his spine. It was a small device, no larger than his palm, smooth and metallic with intricate patterns etched into its surface. It pulsed softly, emitting a warm light that seemed almost alive. Daniel had never seen anything like it before. The technology was far beyond anything the Concorde used, or anything humanity had possessed in centuries. For a moment he hesitated. Picking up strange objects was dangerous. If the Concorde found out, they would accuse him of theft or sabotage. But curiosity got the better of him. He reached out and touched the artifact. Instantly, a jolt of energy shot through his body, and his vision blurred. Images flooded his mind, scenes of towering cities filled with light, ships soaring among the stars, and people living lives of prosperity and peace. These weren't memories of his own life. They belonged to someone else, some distant past he couldn't comprehend. When the visions faded, Daniel stumbled back, gasping for air. His heart raced, and his head throbbed, but he couldn't deny what he had seen. This artifact was a piece of humanity's history, a relic from a time when Earth had been strong and free, and somehow it had chosen him. Daniel knew he couldn't keep this discovery to himself. Wrapping the artifact carefully in a scrap of cloth, he hurried toward the outskirts of the city, where Rachel Monroe lived. Rachel was one of the few people he trusted. She worked as a medic in the underground resistance movement, tending to wounded fighters and smuggling supplies whenever she could. Her apartment was hidden in the basement of an abandoned building, accessible only through a maze of tunnels and secret passages. When Daniel arrived, Rachel was hunched over a table, sorting through medical supplies. She looked up as he entered, her sharp green eyes immediately noticing the tension in his posture. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice low and steady. "I found something," Daniel replied, pulling the artifact from his pocket. He placed it on the table between them and explained how he had discovered it and what had happened when he touched it. Rachel studied the object carefully, her brow furrowed in thought. This is incredible," she murmured. Do you Realize what this could mean. If we can figure out how it works, we might finally have a way to fight back. But excitement quickly gave way to caution. Both of them knew the risks. If word got out about the artifact, the Conquered would stop at nothing to get their hands on it. Worse still, there were humans who collaborated with the aliens, willing to betray their own kind for scraps of power or protection. Trust was a luxury neither of them could afford. "We need help," Rachel said after a long silence. "There are others. People who've been fighting for years, they'll know what to do." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. Over the next few days, they reached out to members of the Resistance, sharing their discovery with only those they deemed trustworthy. Among them were Elena Cruz, a former soldier-turned-strategist, and Liam Bennett, a hacker known for his ability to infiltrate Conquered systems. Together, they formed a small team dedicated to unlocking the artifact's secrets. Their progress was slow but promising. Using makeshift tools and stolen equipment, Liam managed to interface with the artifact, extracting fragments of data that hinted at advanced technologies and forgotten knowledge. Meanwhile, Elena pored over ancient texts and maps, searching for clues about the artifact's origin. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, a civilization that had once ruled the stars, brought low by betrayal and greed. But their efforts did not go unnoticed. Strange incidents started happening around the city. Conquered patrols appeared in areas they usually avoided, and rumors spread of informants being paid handsomely for information about unusual activity. One night, as Daniel and Rachel returned to her hideout, they found it ransacked. Supplies were scattered everywhere, and the artifact was gone. Panic gripped them both. Without the artifact, all their work would be for nothing. More importantly, whoever had taken it might already be deciphering its secrets and using them against humanity. Determined not to give up, Daniel vowed to track down the thieves and retrieve the artifact, no matter the cost. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change the fate of Earth forever. The loss of the artifact hit Daniel and Rachel hard. For days, they barely slept, their minds racing with questions. Who had taken it? How much did they know? And most importantly, could they get it back? The Resistance was already on edge, its members whispering about traitors in their midst. Trust, always fragile, was beginning to crumble. But Daniel refused to give up. He had seen the visions, felt the power of the artifact. It wasn't just a relic, it was hope. And he couldn't. "Let it slip away," Rachel urged caution. "We can't rush into this blindly," she said one evening as they sat huddled in a makeshift safe house on the outskirts of the city. The room was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. "If the Concord has the artifact, we're walking into a trap. But if we don't act, they'll figure out how to use it against us," Daniel countered. His voice was firm, though his hands trembled slightly as he clenched them into fists. "We have no choice." Elena Cruz, who had joined them after hearing about the theft, nodded in agreement. "Daniel's right. If the Concord cracks the artifact's secrets, it's game over for us. We need to move fast, but smart." Liam Bennett, the hacker, leaned forward, his sharp eyes gleaming with determination. "I've been monitoring their networks," he said. "There's chatter about some kind of breakthrough at the central hub in New York City. That's where they're keeping the artifact. If we want it back, that's where we need to go." New York City. Just the name sent a chill through the group. Once a bustling metropolis, it was now a fortress controlled entirely by the Concord. Towering skyscrapers loomed over the streets, their windows dark and lifeless. Alien patrols roamed every corner, and surveillance drones hovered silently in the sky. Breaking into such a heavily guarded location seemed impossible, but they didn't have any other options. Over the next few days, the team devised a plan. Liam would hack into the Concord systems to disable the security cameras and alarms around the central hub. Elena would lead a small strike team to create a diversion, drawing attention away from the main entrance. Meanwhile, Daniel and Rachel would infiltrate the building and retrieve the artifact. It was risky, but it was the best chance they had. The night of the mission arrived sooner than anyone expected. The air was cold and damp, and a light drizzle soaked the streets as the group made their way toward the city. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows and avoiding the bright beams of the patrol drones. Every sound, the distant hum of engines, the crunch of gravel underfoot, set their nerves on edge. When they reached the outskirts of New York, Elena split off with her team heading toward a nearby supply depot. Her job was to set off a series of explosions that would draw the Concord's forces away from the central hub. Daniel watched her go, his stomach tightening with worry. He knew the risks she was taking, but there was no time to dwell on it. He and Rachel pressed onward, slipping through the maze of alleyways until they reached their target. The central hub was an imposing structure, its sleek metallic surface glinting faintly in the moonlight. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons ready. Daniel and Rachel crouched behind a pile of rubble, waiting for Liam's signal. Moments later, a series of loud booms echoed through the city, followed by flashes of orange light in the distance. The diversion had worked. The guards scrambled to respond, leaving the entrance unguarded. "Now or never," Rachel whispered, gripping the handle of her makeshift weapon tightly. Together, they darted across the open space and slipped inside the building. The interior was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of machinery. Rows of servers lined the walls, their blinking lights casting an eerie glow. In the center of the room stood a glass case containing the artifact. It pulsed gently, as if aware of their presence. Daniel approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out to touch the case, but before he could, a voice rang out behind them. "Stop right there!" They froze. Turning slowly, they saw a figure step out of the shadows, a tall insectoid alien with gleaming black eyes and razor-sharp mandibles. It was Commander Vrax, one of the Concord's most feared enforcers. Known for his ruthlessness, Vrax had crushed countless rebellions across the galaxy. Now, he stood between them and the artifact, his weapon trained on them. "You humans are predictable," Vrax sneered, his voice low and guttural. "Did you really think you could sneak into my stronghold without me knowing?" Daniel's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But then he remembered something Liam had told them earlier. The artifact responded to human touch. If he could reach it, maybe it would give them a fighting chance. Summoning every ounce of courage, he lunged forward, grabbing the artifact from its case. Instantly, the room was bathed in a blinding light. The artifact vibrated in Daniel's hand, emitting a high-pitched whine that made his ears ring. Vrax staggered backward, momentarily stunned. Seizing the opportunity, Rachel grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him toward the exit. "Run!" she shouted. They sprinted through the corridors, the artifact's light illuminating their path. Behind them, Vrax recovered quickly, barking orders to his troops. Alarms blared, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as they ran, narrowly missing them. Just as they reached the exit, a massive explosion rocked the building. Elena's diversion had escalated into a full-scale assault, giving them the opening they needed. Bursting outside, they found themselves face-to-face with chaos. Smoke filled the air, and the sounds of battle reverberated through the streets. Resistance fighters clashed with Concord troops, their makeshift weapons no match for the aliens. "Advanced technology! We need to get out of here!" Rachel yelled, pulling Daniel toward a nearby alleyway. They ducked into the shadows, clutching the artifact tightly. Their escape route was blocked by debris, forcing them to take a longer, more dangerous path. Every step felt like an eternity, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Finally, they reached the rendezvous point, a crumbling warehouse on the edge of the city. Elena and Liam were already there, along with a handful of survivors from the strike. Team. Relief washed over them as they saw Daniel and Rachel emerge from the darkness. "You got it?" Elena asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Daniel held up the artifact, its light dimming slightly but still visible. "We got it," he confirmed. But their victory was short-lived. As they caught their breath, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. The mission had been successful, but at a great cost. Many of their comrades had been captured or killed, and the Concord now knew that the resistance was more organized and more dangerous than they had anticipated. "We can't stay here," Liam said grimly. "They'll be hunting us down. We need to regroup and figure out our next move." Rachel nodded, her expression grim. "And we need to find out exactly what this thing can do. It might be our only chance to turn the tide." As the group prepared to leave, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of a Concorde ship broke the silence. The fight was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. But for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. The artifact was proof that humanity's past was greater than anyone had imagined, and perhaps, just perhaps, it held the key to their future. With the artifact safely in their possession, the group disappeared into the night, determined to keep fighting no matter the odds. The resistance fighters moved quickly, disappearing into the shadows of the ruined city. They stayed off the main roads, sticking to narrow alleys and abandoned buildings. The artifact, now safely tucked away in a reinforced case, pulsed faintly, with an otherworldly light. It was a constant reminder of what they had risked, and what they still needed to do. But as they retreated deeper into hiding, tensions began to rise. Daniel carried the artifact, his fingers brushing against its smooth surface every so often. He could feel it humming softly, almost like it was alive. It gave him a strange sense of comfort, but also unease. What exactly was this thing, and why had it chosen him? These questions gnawed at him, but he pushed them aside. Now wasn't the time for doubt. They had just pulled off a daring raid on the Concorde Central Hub, and while they had succeeded in retrieving the artifact, the cost had been high. Too many lives lost, too much destruction left in their wake. Rachel walked beside him, her face pale and drawn. She hadn't said much since they escaped New York City, but Daniel could see the weight of everything pressing down on her. "We need to figure out how to use this," she finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet but firm. "If we don't, all of this was for nothing." Elena Cruz nodded in agreement. "She's right. This isn't just about keeping it safe anymore. We need answers, fast." Elena had taken charge during the chaos after the raid, organizing the survivors and setting up temporary shelters. She was practical, no nonsense, and always thinking 2 steps ahead. But even she looked tired now, her usual confidence replaced by worry. Liam Bennett, the hacker, adjusted the goggles perched on his forehead and sighed. "I've been analyzing the data we pulled from the artifact before it was stolen," he said. "There are fragments of code, bits of information that suggest, well, something big, maybe even instructions for building weapons or defenses. But it's incomplete. Without more context, I can't make sense of it." "Then we find someone who can," Daniel said firmly. His tone surprised even himself. He wasn't used to taking charge, but desperation was pushing him forward. "There has to be someone out there who knows more about this kind of technology." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Trust was a rare commodity these days, especially when it came to outsiders. Many humans worked directly for the conquered, betraying their own people for scraps of food or protection. Bringing in someone new meant risking exposure, and possibly losing the artifact again. "We'll need to be careful," Rachel warned. "Not everyone is going to share our goals. If word gets out that we have this thing—" "I know someone," Elena interrupted suddenly. All eyes turned to her. "He's not human, an alien. but he's different. Goes by the name Kyle. Used to fly cargo ships for the Concorde until they grounded him for questioning orders. He owes me a favor. A favor? Liam raised an eyebrow skeptically. You think we can trust him? He helped us once before, Elena replied. And he hates the Concorde almost as much as we do. That makes him useful, at least for now. After some debate, the group reluctantly agreed to meet with Kyle. They couldn't afford to ignore any potential leads, no matter how risky. The next evening, under the cover of darkness, they traveled to a remote airfield outside the city. Kyle was waiting for them, leaning casually against the side of a battered old spacecraft. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing, blue eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. Unlike most aliens in the Concorde, he didn't wear armor or carry weapons. Instead, he dressed in simple, patched-up clothes, giving him a scruffy, unassuming appearance. You must really be desperate if you're coming to me, Kyle said with a smirk as they approached. His voice was smooth and calm, though there was an edge to it, a hint of bitterness beneath the surface. We need your help, Elena said bluntly. This is important. Kale's gaze shifted to the case in Daniel's hands. That's quite the trinket you've got there. Mind telling me what it is? It's complicated, Daniel replied, hesitating. But it's powerful and dangerous. The Concorde wants it back. Badly. Kyle studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, let's hear it. They explained everything, the visions, the raid on New York, the artifact's mysterious origins. Kyle listened intently, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he let out a low whistle. You're playing with fire here, he said. If the Concorde finds out you've got this, well, let's just say things will get messy. That's why we need your ship, Elena cut in. We need to move fast and stay hidden. Can you help us or not? Kyle crossed his arms and thought for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. All right. I'll take you where you need to go. But don't expect me to stick around once we land. Helping you is one thing. Dying for you is another. With Kale on board, the group boarded his ship and set course for a secret research facility located deep in the mountains. According to Elena, the facility had once belonged to Earth's ancient scientists, people who might have understood the artifact's purpose. It was a long shot, but it was the best lead they had. The journey was tense. None of them fully trusted Kale, and the cramped quarters of the ship only added to the unease. Daniel spent most of the trip staring at the artifact, trying to piece together its secrets. Occasionally, flashes of memory would come to him, images of stars and machines, whispers of a forgotten language. Each vision left him feeling both, exhilarated and drained. When they arrived at the facility, they found it abandoned and overgrown with vegetation. Vines snaked through shattered windows, and moss covered the walls. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked under their weight. Despite its dilapidated state, the place still held traces of its former glory. Faded diagrams lined the walls, and rusted equipment lay scattered across the rooms. This looks promising, Liam muttered sarcastically as he examined a broken console. Any chance this stuff still works? It doesn't matter if it does, Rachel said. What matters is whether it can tell us anything about the artifact. Hours passed as they searched the facility, uncovering documents and devices that hinted at humanity's advanced past. Finally, Liam stumbled upon something significant, a terminal buried beneath piles of debris. After some tinkering, he managed to power it up. Lines of text scrolled across the cracked screen, written in a language none of them recognized. Kyle, Daniel called out. Can you read this? Kale stepped forward, squinting at the screen. It's Old Galactic, he said after a moment. A dead language. Most species stopped using it centuries ago. Can you translate it? Rachel asked eagerly. I can try. Cale leaned closer, his brow furrowing in concentration. As he worked, fragments of the text began to make sense. It spoke of a device capable of unlocking untold power, but also of great danger. Whoever created it had intended it to be used wisely, but also feared what might happen if it fell into the wrong hands. Before Cale could finish, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "We've got company!" Elena shouted, rushing toward the entrance. Sure enough, Concord troops were closing in, their ships descending rapidly from the sky. Kyle cursed under his breath. "Looks like someone tipped them off." "There's no time to run," Rachel exclaimed. "We have to hold them off." Using whatever makeshift weapons they had, the group barricaded themselves inside the facility. Gunfire echoed through the halls as they fought to defend their position. Cale proved surprisingly skilled in combat, wielding a scavenged energy rifle with deadly precision. Even so, the odds were stacked against them. As the battle raged, Daniel realized they wouldn't be able to hold out much longer. Desperation drove him to act. Clutching the artifact tightly, he focused all his energy on it, willing it to respond. To his astonishment, it began to glow brighter than ever before, emitting waves of energy that rippled outward. The conquered soldiers froze, their weapons faltering as the artifact's power overwhelmed them. "What are you doing?" Rachel yelled, shielding her eyes from the blinding light. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, his voice trembling. "But it's working." The artifact's energy surged one final time, creating a shockwave that knocked everyone, including the conquered troops, off their feet. When the light faded, the facility was eerily silent. The enemy had retreated, likely, fearing further retaliation. Breathing heavily, Daniel lowered the artifact, his hands shaking. "We need to leave. Now." No one argued. Gathering what little supplies they could carry, they fled the facility and returned to Cale's ship. As they took off, leaving the mountains behind, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the artifact's true potential. It had saved them, for now, but it had also shown them just how dangerous it could be. Back in hiding, the group regrouped to assess their next move. The artifact had given them hope, but it had also made them targets. The Concord would stop at nothing to reclaim it, and traitors within humanity's ranks would do anything to sell them out. Yet despite the mounting challenges, Daniel felt a renewed determination. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. The aftermath of their escape from the mountain facility left the group shaken but alive. The artifact's power had saved them, but it also raised new questions and new dangers. Daniel sat alone in a dimly lit corner of their temporary hideout, staring at the glowing device resting on his lap. It pulsed faintly, as if responding to his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was testing him, pushing him toward something greater or darker than he could imagine. Rachel entered the room quietly, her footsteps barely audible against the cold concrete floor. She paused for a moment, watching him. "You okay?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. Daniel looked up, startled. "I don't know," he admitted. His voice was low, tinged with uncertainty. "This thing, it's like it has a mind of its own. Every time I touch it, I see things, feel things that make no sense." Rachel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's not just you," she said. "We all feel it. Whatever this artifact is, it's tied to humanity's past, and maybe its future too. But we can't let it control us. We have to stay focused." Her words grounded him, if only for a moment. They had come too far to give in to fear or doubt. Now. The Concord was still hunting them, and every second they spent hiding was another second the aliens could use to tighten their grip on Earth. The Resistance needed a plan, a bold move that would strike at the heart of the Galactic Concord and expose their crimes to the galaxy. Elena Cruz stood near a makeshift table littered with maps and stolen data tablets. Her sharp eyes scanned the room as she addressed the group. "We've been running long enough," she said firmly. "If we want to win this fight, we need to hit them where it hurts. Their orbital command station. It controls their blockade around Earth and keeps us cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Take that out, and we open the door for real change." Liam Bennett adjusted his goggles, leaning forward with interest. "Sounds risky," he said, "but doable. If we can disable their shields, we might be able to breach the station and broadcast a message to the entire Concord network. Show everyone what they've done to humanity." Kyle, who had remained suspiciously quiet since their return, finally spoke up. "And how exactly do you plan to get close enough to pull that off? That station is crawling with guards and bristling with weapons. You'd need an army, or at least some serious firepower." "We'll use what we've got," Elena replied. "Old ships, scavenge parts, anything we can find. It won't be pretty, but it'll work." The plan came together quickly, driven by necessity rather than confidence. Liam hacked into the Concord's databases, gathering intel on the station's layout and defenses. Elena coordinated with scattered resistance cells across the globe, rallying fighters and resources. Meanwhile, Rachel worked tirelessly to prepare medical supplies, knowing full well the casualties they would face. As the days passed, the group transformed a cluster of abandoned warehouses into a staging ground for their assault. Retrofitted. Ships lined the hangar, patched together from scraps of old Earth wreckage. Volunteers poured in from all corners of the planet, men and women willing to risk everything for a chance at freedom. Among them was Dr. Nira Solis, a former Concord. Scientist who had grown disillusioned with the Alliance's cruelty. She approached Daniel one evening, her expression somber but resolute. "I know what the artifact is," she said without preamble. "Or at least I think I do. It's a key. A tool created by your ancestors to unlock unimaginable power. The Concord fears it because it represents a truth they've tried to bury, that humanity was once a dominant force in the galaxy." Daniel frowned, studying her carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to help," Nira replied. "I've seen what the Concord has done, not just to Earth, but to countless other worlds. If you succeed, it could mean justice for everyone. For that, I'm willing to pay any price." Her words stayed with Daniel as the final preparations were made. When the day of the mission arrived, the air buzzed with nervous energy. Fighters gathered in the hangar, checking their weapons and sharing quiet words of encouragement. Kyle stood near his ship smoking a cigarette and muttering under his breath about how crazy the whole plan was. Yet when it came time to board, he didn't hesitate. The fleet launched under cover of darkness, slipping past Concord patrols thanks to Liam's clever jamming signals. As they approached the orbital station, the sheer scale of it became apparent. It loomed above them like a mechanical leviathan, its surface dotted with turrets and docking bays. A thick energy shield surrounded it, shimmering faintly in the void of space. "This is it," Elena said over the comms, her voice steady despite the tension. "Remember the plan, stick to your assignments, and don't stop until the job is done." The first wave of ships moved in, drawing fire from the station's defenses. Explosions lit up the darkness as fighters engaged the enemy head-on, creating chaos and confusion. Amid the fray, Daniel piloted the flagship, a battered old cruiser retrofitted with stolen Concord tech. Beside him, Rachel monitored communications. "Guiding squadrons and relaying updates. Shields are down in Sector 3, Liam announced triumphantly. "We've got a clear path." "Take us in," Daniel ordered, gripping the controls tightly. The ship shuddered as it breached the station's outer defenses, narrowly avoiding a barrage of missiles. Inside the hangar bay, resistance fighters spilled out, engaging Concord troops in fierce close-quarters combat. Daniel and Rachel joined the fray, moving swiftly through the labyrinthine corridors. Their objective was the central control room, where Nira waited with the equipment needed to transmit their message. Along the way, they faced relentless opposition, alien soldiers armed with advanced weaponry and drones programmed to eliminate intruders. At one point, Kale appeared seemingly out of nowhere, firing his rifle with deadly accuracy. "Thought, you might need a hand," he quipped, grinning despite the chaos around them. They reached the control room just as Commander Vrax arrived, his insectoid form towering over the humans. "You've gone too far this time," he growled, raising his weapon. "Your rebellion ends here." A fierce battle ensued. Daniel fought with everything he had, fueled by anger and desperation. With the artifact glowing brightly in his pocket, he felt a surge of strength that pushed him beyond his limits. Finally, with a well-placed shot from Rachel's weapon, Vrax fell, his body collapsing in a heap of chitinous armor. Nira wasted no time, connecting her device to the station's mainframe. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as she uploaded. The damning evidence they had gathered, the atrocities committed by the Concord, the betrayal of humanity's allies, and the truth about Earth's ancient empire. When the upload completed, she turned to the group, her face pale but determined. "It's done," she said. "The galaxy will know the truth." Outside, the tide of battle began to turn. With the station's systems crippled, the Concord's forces faltered. Resistance fighters pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back. In the end, the orbital command station lay in ruins, its destruction a symbol of humanity's defiance. As the survivors regrouped aboard Kale's ship, Daniel looked out at the stars. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope, not just for Earth, but for the future of all those oppressed by the conquered. The war was far from over, but they had taken the first step toward reclaiming their destiny. The destruction of the Concord's orbital command station marked a turning point in humanity's struggle for freedom. News of the Resistance's victory spread quickly across Earth, carried by word of mouth and scattered radio broadcasts. People, who had long given up hope, began to rise from the shadows, inspired by the idea that change was possible. The artifact's message, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, had exposed the Concord's crimes, forcing its member species to confront their complicity in humanity's enslavement. But the aftermath wasn't without its challenges. The Concord, humiliated and enraged, launched brutal counterattacks against human settlements. Entire cities were razed, their populations displaced or killed outright. Retaliation came swiftly and mercilessly, leaving the Resistance scrambling to protect as many people as they could. Daniel Carter and his team found themselves at the center of this chaos, trying to hold together a fragile coalition of fighters while rebuilding what little remained of Earth. Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to tend to the wounded and organize relief efforts. She moved between makeshift shelters, her medical bag slung over one shoulder, offering comfort where she could. The strain showed on her face, but she refused to slow down. "We can't stop now," she told Daniel one evening as they sat together, in a crumbling safe house. "If we do, everything we've fought for will be for nothing." Daniel nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The artifact still pulsed faintly in his pocket, its presence both a burden and a beacon. He had seen glimpses of humanity's past, their ancestors' mastery of technology, their dominance among the stars, but he knew that reclaiming that legacy wouldn't be easy. The knowledge contained within the artifact was vast, far beyond anything modern humans could fully comprehend. Yet it offered a path forward, a way to rebuild not just Earth, but humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena Cruz took charge of coordinating the Resistance's remaining forces, rallying survivors and strategizing their next moves. Her leadership was unwavering, even as cracks began to form within the movement. Some factions argued for immediate retaliation against the Concord, demanding blood for blood. Others urged caution, warning that humanity wasn't ready to face such overwhelming odds. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Liam Bennett, meanwhile, focused on decoding more of the artifact's secrets. With Dr. Nira Solis's help, he managed to extract fragments of data that hinted at advanced technologies, weapons, shields, and propulsion systems far beyond anything currently available. "This is incredible," Liam said one night as he pored over the information. "If we can replicate even a fraction of this tech, we'll stand a real chance against the conquered." "It's not just about weapons," Nira reminded him gently. "This knowledge has the potential to reshape entire civilizations. We have to use it wisely." Kyle, the rogue alien pilot, remained an enigma. Though he had proven himself during the assault on the command station, his loyalty was still questioned by some members of the Resistance. He didn't seem to mind. Instead, he kept to himself, flying supply runs and scouting missions with quiet efficiency. When Daniel asked him why he stayed, Kyle simply shrugged. "You're fighting for something bigger than yourselves," he said. "That's rare these days. Besides, I owe the Concord a few debts of my own." As weeks turned into months, the Resistance began to rebuild. Hidden factories churned out new ships and weapons based on designs gleaned from the artifact. Refugees poured into secret camps, eager to join the fight. The message sent to the galaxy hadn't gone unnoticed either. Sympathetic alien species reached out cautiously, offering aid and resources in exchange for alliances. Not all were trustworthy, but some proved invaluable, sharing intelligence and supplies that helped bolster humanity's efforts. Despite the progress, the scars of oppression ran deep. Many humans harbored resentment toward the Concord, and toward those who had collaborated with them. Betrayals lingered in the air, poisoning relationships and fueling paranoia. Marcus Hale, the traitor who had fled during the earlier mission, resurfaced briefly, broadcasting a message urging humanity to surrender and accept the Concord's rule. His words sparked outrage among the Resistance, but also fear. How many others like him were still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike? One day, as Daniel stood atop a hill overlooking a burgeoning settlement, Rachel joined him. Below, workers labored to construct new buildings, their efforts bringing life back to a desolate landscape. Smoke rose from chimneys, and children played. In the streets, a small but significant sign of hope. "They're counting on us," Rachel said softly, breaking the silence. "All of them. Not just here, but everywhere." "I know," Daniel replied. His voice was heavy with responsibility, yet tinged with determination. "It's not going to be easy. Maybe it never will be. But we can't give up. Not now." Rachel smiled faintly. "Do you ever wonder what our ancestors would think of us? The ones who built this?" She gestured toward the artifact, which Daniel still carried with him wherever he went. "Sometimes," Daniel admitted, "I think they'd be proud, and maybe scared. We're walking a fine line between creating something great and repeating the mistakes of the past." "That's why we have to choose carefully," Rachel said. "Every step we take matters. Every decision shapes the future." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but it was theirs to walk. Humanity had been knocked down countless times, but it had always found a way to rise again. This time would be no different. In the distance, the sound of laughter echoed through the settlement, a reminder that life endured, even in the darkest of times. Daniel turned to Rachel, his expression resolute. "We'll keep fighting," he said, "for Earth, for everyone who suffered under the Concord, and for the chance to build something better." Together, they descended the hill, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle for humanity's final judgment was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the outcome was no longer certain. Hope burned brightly, fueled by courage, resilience, and the unyielding belief that freedom was worth any price. The Resistance's victory at the orbital command station had ignited a fire that spread across Earth and beyond. The galaxy was watching, some species intrigued by humanity's defiance, others outraged by the exposure of the Concorde's crimes. For Daniel Carter and his team, the aftermath brought both opportunities and challenges. Every day felt like a balancing act, rebuilding what had been lost while preparing for the next attack. In one of the hidden settlements, work continued around the clock. Factories hummed with activity as engineers and builders pieced together new ships and weapons using designs extracted from the artifact. The technology was unlike anything they had ever seen, and though progress was slow, each breakthrough brought them closer to leveling the playing field against the Concorde. Dr. Nira Solis worked closely with Liam Bennett, her expertise in alien tech complementing his hacking skills. Together, they deciphered fragments of the artifact's code, unlocking secrets that seemed almost magical in their complexity. "It's like learning a whole new language," Liam muttered one evening, rubbing his tired eyes. He sat hunched over a cluttered workstation, surrounded by glowing screens and scattered notes. "But every piece we figure out makes us stronger." Nira nodded, her expression thoughtful. "This isn't just about winning a war," she said. "It's about rediscovering who you are as a species. Your ancestors were brilliant. They built wonders that shaped the galaxy. You can do it again." Their optimism was contagious, spreading through the settlement like wildfire. People who had once lived in fear now dared to dream of a better future. Children played in the streets, their laughter echoing off the walls of newly constructed buildings. Farmers tilled fields reclaimed from ash and rubble, planting seeds of hope alongside crops. Even the air felt lighter, as if the weight of centuries of oppression was finally lifting. But not everyone shared this newfound optimism. In the shadows, dissent brewed. Some humans resented the Resistance's reliance on alien allies, accusing them of trading one form of dependence for another. Others questioned whether the artifact's power could truly be controlled, or whether it would consume them all in the end. Marcus Hale's broadcasts grew more frequent, his words laced with promises of safety under Concorde rule. His message found an audience among those too weary or frightened to fight anymore. Elena Cruz took these threats seriously. As the leader of the Resistance's military efforts, she knew that internal divisions could be just as dangerous as external enemies. She called a meeting of the group's core members, gathering them in a dimly lit bunker beneath the settlement. The mood was tense, the air thick with unspoken fears. "We're vulnerable," Elena began, her voice firm but measured. "The Concorde is regrouping, and we've got traitors whispering in people's ears. If we don't stay united, we'll lose everything." Daniel listened intently, his fingers brushing against the artifact in his pocket. It pulsed faintly as if sensing his unease. "We need to show people why we're fighting," he said, "not just against the Concorde, but for something bigger, a future where no one has to live in fear." Rachel Monroe agreed. "We've made progress, but it's not enough. We need to reach out to other settlements, remind them that they're not alone. Hope spreads faster than fear if we give it a chance." Cale, who rarely spoke during meetings, leaned forward suddenly. "There's another way," he said, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Daniel's. "Take the fight to the Concorde. Hit them where it hurts, in their own territory. Show them that humanity isn't just surviving. We're coming for them." The room fell silent. Cale's suggestion was bold and risky. Attacking the Concorde directly meant venturing into uncharted space, facing overwhelming odds without the advantage of familiar terrain. But it also offered a chance to strike a decisive blow, one that could cripple their enemy's ability to wage war. After a long pause, Elena broke the silence. "It's crazy," she admitted, "but it might work. If we hit key targets, their supply lines, their manufacturing hubs, we can weaken them enough to buy ourselves time. The decision wasn't made lightly. Over the next few days, the group debated strategy, weighing risks against rewards. Finally, they reached a consensus. They would launch a series of coordinated strikes deep within conquered-controlled space. It would require precise planning, flawless execution, and nerves of steel. But if successful, it could turn the tide of the war. Preparations began immediately. Ships were retrofitted with advanced weaponry based on the artifact's designs. Volunteers stepped forward, eager to join the mission despite the dangers. Among them was a young woman named Ava Morales, a skilled pilot who had grown up hearing stories of Earth's glory days. Her determination inspired those around her, reminding them of why they were fighting. As the fleet prepared to depart, Daniel stood before the gathered fighters, addressing them for the first time as a leader. His voice wavered slightly at first, but grew stronger as he spoke. "We've been pushed down, beaten, and broken," he said, "but we've never given up. Today, we take the fight to our oppressors. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will rise again." The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits buoyed by his words. Rachel watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in her chest. She approached him after the speech, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're becoming quite the speaker," she teased gently. Daniel smiled, though his eyes betrayed his nerves. "I just hope I'm doing the right thing." "You are," Rachel assured him. "No matter what happens, you've already changed everything." The mission launched under cover of darkness, the fleet slipping past conquered patrols thanks to Liam's ingenious cloaking technology. Their first target was a massive supply depot orbiting a distant moon. Resistance fighters struck swiftly and decisively, disabling defenses and destroying stockpiles of weapons and resources. The attack caught the Concorde completely off guard, leaving them scrambling to respond. Word of the raid spread quickly, sparking panic within the Alliance. Member species began questioning their loyalty to the Concorde, fearing that humanity's resurgence would destabilize the entire galaxy. Some even began secretly negotiating with the Resistance, offering support in exchange for protection once the war ended. Back on Earth, the settlements thrived, bolstered by news of the fleet's success. Farmers harvested bumper crops, and builders constructed schools and hospitals, laying the foundation for a new society. Yet, amidst the celebration, there was an undercurrent of sorrow. Casualties mounted with each mission, and the cost of freedom weighed heavily on everyone. One night, as Daniel stood atop a hill overlooking the largest settlement, he reflected on how far they had come. The artifact rested in his hands, its light, steady, and warm. It had guided them through unimaginable challenges, but it also reminded him of the responsibility they bore. Humanity's future was theirs to shape, but only if they remained vigilant. Rachel joined him, as she often did, her presence a comforting constant. "Do you think we'll ever see peace?" she asked quietly. Daniel hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I believe we're closer than we've ever been. Peace won't come easy, it never does, but it's worth fighting for." Together, they gazed out at the horizon, watching as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but for the first time in centuries, humanity dared to hope. And hope, Daniel realized, was the most powerful weapon of all.